Palpatine was wrong. Those who live under fear cannot wait to throw off that yoke. I've seen the footage taken after the news of the Emperor's death hit the newsnet. The people of Coruscant celebrated louder and longer than anyone. This was a quote by Luke Skywalker when he was facing off against Grand Admiral Thrawn, attempting to prove a point about the Empire and Sidious. Here, he refers to the loud uprising that occurred on Coruscant following the Emperor's death above Endor. In 4 ABY, the impossible occurred and the rebellion triumphed over the Empire, but not just in destroying the Death Star again, but this time the Emperor and Lord Vader fell along with it. The Empire was officially finished, and it was only a matter of time before the regime dissolved. When the news of this victory reached the HoloNet, the Imperials did their best to suppress it immediately, only for it to reach all across the galaxy, sparking celebration and more rebellion everywhere. But there were no celebrations like the one held on Coruscant, but things get bloody quickly, and it too eventually devolved into a full-fledged riot. Greetings again, students of the Force, and welcome back to the archives. It's time again to open a holocron into the historical event which often flies under the radar, that being the Riots of Coruscant, as this is one of the most shocking events to happen following the death of the Emperor. And today, we are going to detail everything that happened on Coruscant both in Legends and canon immediately after Endor. How did the capital of the Empire react to the death of their leader? Only a couple of hours following the Battle of Endor, it would be rebel intelligence networks that began broadcasting the news of the Empire's defeat and the death of Palpatine all across the galaxy. Imperial forces and agencies were in utter disarray, which left several gaps for the news to reach millions of systems. Not millions of people, millions of systems. Though the Empire would be able to censor and suppress most of the news outlets going into the core worlds. The rebel intelligence, though, had one planet in mind and immediately mobilized to get the word out to Coruscant and the core. Despite the fact that those worlds were heavily populated with Imperial loyalists, the truth needed to be heard before the Empire was going to crumble completely, and was able to put its own spin on the events of Endor. Traveling directly to Coruscant, several rebel insurgent groups and pilots of the Wraith Squadron would override the normal Imperial channels on the HoloNet, retransmitting the true news feed out to the wide band. This is what the rebels did immediately after Endor. The massive rebroadcast was heard on every billboard in the city, every personal comlink, and every household holoprojector. The undeniable footage of the second Death Star being destroyed, and the celebration of other planets was shown in full glory on Coruscant, everywhere at once. As a result, a substantial amount of Coruscanti citizens made their way to the Monument Plaza, which was just outside of the Imperial Palace. They celebrated and cheered, setting off fireworks and chanting, "Down with the Emperor," as well as the phrase, "Ji Shata Gashal," the Huttese phrase for jubilation and exultation. But this was no mere peaceful celebration. This crowd was armed, and they attacked Imperial patrols as they stormed the plaza. The rioters pulled down a massive statue of Palpatine using ropes and chains. Imperial symbols were defaced by rebel and rebel sympathizers, and this was not just happening in the Monument Plaza, but in several sectors of Coruscant at once. Scrambling to respond, the Empire made a deadly decision. The panicked director of Imperial Intelligence dispatched stormtrooper death squads, as well as security forces, to shut down the riots using lethal force. She gave the military and the police full authority to exercise any method they deemed necessary in order to restore order. And when the patrol speeders of the troopers arrived, they opened fire straight into the crowd. The Coruscanti rioters fought back, however, using their own weapons and hurling broken pieces of what was once Palpatine's statue. Some citizens even jumped into the police speeders to fight the stormtroopers personally. The police, however, kept firing, trying to suppress the crowd that had now become an angry mob. The civilian death toll was catastrophic here, but the rioters would not go down without bringing a sizable portion of the stormtroopers with them. Eventually, under the oppressive blaster fire, the riots were quelled, and many citizens were beaten, roughly arrested, or murdered right there. People who had set off fireworks earlier were lined up and executed by a firing squad. Rebel sympathizers ran for their lives as stormtroopers began to go door to door, dragging them away. Martial law was instated all over Coruscant, but rebel insurgent groups still thrived in the underworld. It wasn't long until they began organizing uprisings yet again. This was not over. A sizable number of the Coruscant population was emboldened by the Empire's brutal crackdown, and therefore joined the rebellion instantaneously, causing the planet to devolve into a state of literal civil war. Some sectors remained free from Imperial control, and its citizens entrenched themselves with rebel resistance fighters, while other sectors of Coruscant actively fought against their neighbors and supported the Empire. When this all occurred, the IBS attempted to establish a blockade around Coruscant and make a coordinated effort to restore order with the Stormtrooper Corps. Areas of Coruscant with vital government buildings, such as the Verity District and the neighboring Federal District, were heavily fortified with checkpoints and barricades. The war had officially come to Coruscant in full swing. Many people think that the Battle of Endor marked the conclusion of the Galactic Civil War, when in reality, the Empire was far from finished even though they lost their leader. To make things worse, the Empire had a small victory, as they kept the Federal District relatively secure. The other Imperial sectors and fortifications would eventually fall prey to continual attacks though, with rebel soldiers and Coruscanti citizens alike utilizing guerrilla warfare against Imperial authorities. The blockade over Coruscant did not matter for long, as the Empire was fracturing everywhere. The Imperial warlords were starting to look out for themselves after the death of the Emperor and the power vacuum created. Gallius Rax recalled the fleet from Coruscant eventually, leaving it completely defenseless against the freshly installed New Republic. As the fighting intensified, Imperial forces steadily lost ground, as they had no continual support from outside Imperial forces whatsoever. Eventually, in a desperate move, the ISB would place Grand Vizier Mas Amedda under house arrest in the quarters of the Imperial Palace, as fighting had reached the Federal District. And Mas Amedda, following Sidious's death, became the public face of the Empire. Technically, authority of the Republic had fallen to Mas Amedda after the Emperor's passing, but Amedda was far too scared and too weak to actually lead and rally the Empire in any meaningful way. Had Tarkin been in command, or even worse Thrawn, the Empire would not have fallen as quickly as it did. The Grand Moffs and governors had become warlords, all attempting to hoard resources of the Empire for their own corners of space and their own goal, holding it away from the larger entity. In the Imperial Palace, things were only getting worse for the Empire, as Mas Amedda had attempted to contact both Mon Mothma and Princess Leia in order to turn himself in. However, the rebels refused to take him, and instead demanded that he find a way to consolidate what remained of the Empire and abdicate their power. It was after this that Mas Amedda, with no hope remaining, attempted to escape justice and tried to fling himself off of a balcony of the Imperial Palace. He was stopped, however, by a spy from the Moff Council, who told Amedda that they were rallying together to strike back against the New Republic. After this, the Empire's hold on Coruscant would slowly disintegrate, and it would be claimed by the New Republic, though Imperial loyalists continued to make themselves a problem all the way until the Battle of Jakku, as the Empire began adopting guerrilla warfare tactics against the New Republic, and the tides shifted. But anyway, friends, this is what happened to Coruscant, and why it's important to document this, and how the literal capital of the Empire cheered the loudest when it was crumbled by Luke Skywalker and the Rebellion. We plan to continue this story in another video to cover everything that happened on Coruscant after the fall of the Empire, so if you're interested in that, and our continued videos attempting to chronicle all of Coruscant's history and lore, please be sure to reach out and like the video. But tell us, had you wondered how the capital world responded to Palpatine's death? As always, we thank you for returning to watch the archives and continuing to support the channel. If you have any periods or events in history that you would like to see detailed, please comment those as well. We do read your comments every day and appreciate all of your input. But until next time, we'll see you again in the archives, and may the Force be with you.